Alright, I guess we're all set to start. The next presentation is going to be from our friend Craig Birch. We're talking about the toxic combination of how Active Directory misconfiguration changed into tier 0 compromise. So, just want a quick ground rules here. If you have your phone, please try to make sure it's on silent. And if you need to access to the restroom, as you go here in the hallway, turn your left, turn right. As you go in the first left, you will see there is a bathroom sign. You can either go to the left, but it's going to be further down there. And yeah, if you have any questions regards here space, anything going on, you have those two gentlemen with the yellow shirt, Ron right here, me, and we're here to assist you. So, Greg, without any further ado, please, the floor is yours, and give it up for Greg, please.
Thank you. So, first of all, thanks for having me at BSides Buffalo. I've spoken at a couple of BSides, so I love connecting with BSides. So, what we're going to talk about today is what you don't know will cost you. Modern AD attack paths and toxic combinations. So what am I really talking about here, right? So these are the things as Active Directory administrators we tend to not look at, right? So we don't look at these, we think they're safe, but these are the things that get us in trouble, right? From an attacker's perspective. Because attackers know that, as Nico proved earlier, so thanks, basically we have these misconfigurations in our environment. And if we all know, or maybe you don't know, Active Directory has been around for 26 years, so there's a lot of misconfigurations to be found. I'll just say it that way. So who am I? So I am Craig Birch. I'm a principal security engineer at Chaosoft. I'll talk a little bit about Chaosoft, but it's not about Chaosoft. But more importantly, I am an identity security enthusiast. I love Microsoft identity security. I host Guardians of the Directory podcast. I'm going to date myself here, so I've been around with the block. About 25, 26 years in Active Directory security and architecture. And throughout my career, I tried to leave Active Directory several times to do other things. And then something, always came back. I was always, getting pulled back into identity. And obviously I have a passion for it. So fun fact, I look back into Active Directory's birthday, and we actually share the same birthday. So maybe it was my destiny, right? I mean, who knows? It could have been my destiny. So the other thing I will say, one plug, because it's free for everybody. Chaosoft Guardian Protector. He talked about getting visibility into seeing ACLs, DACLs. Test it, try it. If you love it, let me know. That's the only thing I'll say there. So how can you connect with me? Craig Birch from LinkedIn. Follow Guardians of the Directory podcast. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about why Active Directory is the target. So if we look at Active Directory as being the target, why is it the target? Well, first of all, if you run Active Directory in your business, raise your hand. Yeah. It's 98% in the enterprise. How many people run hybrid Active Directory? Raise your hand. Exactly. Right? So Active Directory is a target because it controls enterprise authentication. So what does it control? Authentication, authorization into apps. It established trust in the organization, right? And that's what it, and then also it's our recovery as well. We don't think of it like that, but it absolutely is. So we have to look at recovery. So if AD is compromised, right, security controls, they fail. We know that, right? So keep that in mind. What happens if Active Directory goes down? Can you guys hear me over there? I don't have no speakers. So. Good? So what if your Active Directory goes down, right? Your business operations stop. If your Active Directory goes down, are you going to function? Probably not. So that's one of the things. So the other thing is, if compromised, our recovery assumptions break. And you probably are thinking, why do I say it that way? And we'll get into that later on to the topic. So think about that right there. Recovery assumptions break. So attackers, and I'm not picking on Nico, right? He obviously is a red teamer, so we'll talk about You're a teamer? I love having him here because he just set me up. Attackers really build their strategy around this. Absolutely. Right? They are building their strategy around if I can basically persist, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So how have attacks evolved? Well, if we look at about how attacks initially started, what was it about? Ransomware, encrypting files, right? What was that? It was destructive, very fast, very noisy. But that's not what we're seeing today. What are we seeing today? It's about controlling the identity, right? It's more patient, right? Persistence, sometimes invisible. So ransomware did not get smarter. They just got more patient. So modern day attacks, their identity first. Attackers moved, I'm not going to say that they don't encrypt files. Do not take that the wrong way. But they moved just from encrypting files to being able to control the identity control plane, to become destructive, and we'll get into that. So if we even go back to even a recent attack, there was a healthcare organization that just had a recent attack that involved Microsoft Intune. It was not a Microsoft Intune attack, I guarantee you that. It was an identity attack. So if we look at it from that aspect, right, so going back to, it really is, people say ransomware. It's cyber extortion. That is the new business model. You've heard of, we're going to encrypt. Yes, that's still true. But more it's moved to extract, encrypt, extort, and then sell, right? I'm going to extort you. First of all, pay the ransom. Do you pay the ransom? No. But I have your data. So what's my next threat? I'm going to threaten you to say, I'm going to sell your data. If I sell your data, or if it's your customer's data, I may even go after your customers as well. Right? So now it's a true business model. And this business model rewards patience and the persistence and quiet access, which is actually what we're going to talk about today. So if you chain these identity attacks and what they can provide to an attacker. So what I want you to understand, attack paths, they're not exploits. They're an inherited trust inside of your organization. Here's a simple example, nested groups. Right? Membership chains that silently expand privilege code. So let's look at the next one. Delegated rights. Sound familiar? Permissions granted for convenience. Hey, how many of you guys are you an AD admin? Anybody that hasn't been an AD admin? Couple, right? I started my career out as an AD admin. I am guilty of all of these. And this one. Unreviewed permissions. So let me ask you guys a question. What's the most dangerous permission out there? Go ahead.
Generic code.
No, the one I put in yesterday. That's the truth.
Oh,
why?
correct.
Because I'm not going to go back and look at it again. Keep that in mind. Yes, generic all is definitely in there.
Yeah, that's
but
correct.
from a different mindset, right? It's the permission I forgot about yesterday. So what happens, right? Small decisions, they're accumulating. So let's think about that. We make these changes. Active Directory, 26 years old. How many AD admins have you had in your environment? Many. First of all, do all AD admins manage Active Directory the same way?
No.
No. Think about it. I can tell you, I was on a fairly large Active Directory team, and none of us did the things the same way. Right? So what I also want you to think about right now, attacks paths exist, whether the attackers are present or not. Think about that. So here is a very simple Active Directory attack path. It's a nested group attack path. And I am guilty of this one as well. So I get a group inside of my Active Directory, and there's members in this group. And then what do I do this, right? We stick in domain admins, maybe, or another group that has privileges. None of this seems unsafe at this point, right? Because we're going to monitor that other group. We think we are. But here's the problem. From an attacker's perspective, I just gave them tier 0. Simple administration. We do it all the time. And I'm not picking on AD admins because I was one. So now let's understand a little bit around threats. So let's look at how some attack vectors, and we're going to go through some things. Misconfigurations is definitely one that we have to be aware of, right? Misconfiguration, what do? They create the opportunity. So what is a misconfiguration? A misconfiguration could be a firewall, an application setting, Active Directory, Entra ID, right? They can have misconfigurations as well. Credential theft. What? Credential theft can be coming from phishing. We'll talk about some other areas as well. I could go buy credentials. But what does credential theft actually turn into? It turns access into authority. And then what's the holy grail? What, if I'm an attacker, what do I need? I need privileges. How do I get privilege escalation? Well, Nico showed us. It expands our control, right? So think about that. So what matters is not the technique. It is the bracket it lives in and how these overlap. So let's talk about a couple misconfigurations you might want to look at. This one. Anybody heard of Golden SAML? Anybody hear of SolarGate attack? So Golden SAML attacks, right? They didn't break authentication. It was a trust. So SolarWinds, SolarGate, you've probably heard of?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Golden SAML was the aftermath. Active Directory Certificate Services. How many people actually use ADCS?
Not well.
Right? What was ADCS supposed to help us with?
Identity.
Security, trust. And again, thanks Nico. Man, this is too easy because if you were for his class earlier, he set this up perfectly. Misconfiguration templates, they turn that trust into long-lived access, right? So we put in certificates to secure our environment, but if a certificate's compromised, it's silent trust, is what I'm saying there. Hybrid Active Directory, we already talked about it. You guys raise your hands. You have Hybrid Active Directory. You ever hear of the identity bridge called DCSync, or actually it's called Entra ID Connect Sync now,
Yeah.
or Cloud Sync, but I'll date myself and use the AD Sync back in the day. You can use the account as a bridge into the environment. Now here's the thing, that account is explicitly trusted by Active Directory and by Entra ID. So if I have access to the account, there's no such thing as zero trust. It's explicitly trusted. So if I compromise the bridge, what happens? I have both on-prem Active Directory and control of your cloud. Anybody hear of the Mercury attack in 2024? That's exactly what happened. So persistence, here's another thing I want you to understand is, if I'm an attacker, my goal is if you reboot, I stay. Hello, I'm still here. That's my goal. Because if you can reboot me and I can't survive the attack, my goal is basically survive a reboot, but also, and I said this earlier, recovery. I need, as an attacker, I need to be able to survive recovery. And that's what true persistence is. So let's look at a couple different things here. So password and ticket harvesting. We're not going to go into these deep, but here's a couple of them. Anybody here at Kerberoasting? Yeah, very, very common. AS rep roasting?
Yeah, not so.
Yeah. Password spraying, most common technique. Still works in some organizations. How about directory level credential access? You can dump the Active Directory database. There's many tools out there. DCSync attack. Anybody hear about DCSync? You're going to see it. I'll actually do that. So at some point in every successful AD attack, these access become what? Credentials. And I'm going to tell you right now, credentials changes everything. So here's one that hopefully nobody's still worried about. So if you aren't familiar in Active Directory, if you don't lock this down, any user can add up to 10 machines in the domain. So what if I'm an attacker and I compromise a regular domain user? That's a problem if I don't have this locked down. Because now what can I do? I can put my attacker machine in the domain as a domain user. Oh geez, now I have like complete trust between Active Directory and my machine. That's a huge issue. Now, hopefully we're locking this down, right? So this exists, right, really for originally to scale environments. But attackers use this to manufacture trust in the organization. We talked, you know, if you heard about delegation, if you haven't, unconstrained delegation. So what's this allow us to do? Impersonate, right? I can impersonate whoever. There was, you know, could be, actually there was a meme that was going away, or going around a long, long time ago. My mom and dad said I could be anything, so I became an Active Directory domain controller. Have I not seen it? Anybody seen that one? I'm a little nerdy, so. So it's true. ACO abuse, right? That's another one. Escalation to DA and privileged service accounts without being. So this privilege escalation works because trust is transitive. So think about that. When Active Directory was built 26 years ago, there was no concept around zero trust, right? We always thought as long as it's within our four walls of our organization, we're good. Also, there was no concept of secure by design. That just came out a couple years ago from Microsoft. Not picking on Microsoft again, right? So just keep that in context. But, so if we think about that, then, you know, it's fully trusted. It's not secure by design. And then what did we do with Active Directory? We basically said we're going to connect it to the cloud. And we didn't do anything probably to clean it up before we connected it to the cloud. So what did we do? We extended our control plane. Anything that was messy in Active Directory was now messy in the cloud. I don't know, maybe you should go back and look at that if you fall into that. So I'm just going to pause here for a second. What do you guys think the new attack surface is in the Microsoft ecosystem? Because I know we're going to get all kinds of other ones.
AI.
AI is definitely one. In the Microsoft ecosystem, I'll make it easier. What do you think the new attack surface is?
365.
Oh. What do you say?
Like 80 connected software.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. So let's look at some of these emerging threats today, right? So some of these you might have heard of, some of you may have not. So Entra ID permissions. Anybody use Entra ID?
No.
Apps. Graph API permissions. Anybody hear of Midnight Blizzard?
No.
Familiar with Midnight Blizzard attack that happened? Oh, so let me break this down. It was actually an attack against Microsoft. It started out, I actually do this talk about the attack, but I'll talk about it real quick. It started out as a password spray. Remember I said that still the word. The password sprayed Microsoft test tenant. The test tenant actually had a application inside of there, and that user that they password sprayed was an application owner over that Entra ID application. That Entra ID application had some high privileges in Graph API permissions, right? So Graph API. And then what they were able to do is they found out that not only did that app have high permissions, it had actually rights to their production tenant. So they, lateral movement, full privilege escalation. It was all over the news, right? Like, how many of you guys use VMware?
Not as much as I used to.
Yeah, probably not as much. Okay. Were you guys aware about the VMware ESX authentication bypass? Some people are shaking their heads. Yeah? If you're not, there's a group in Active Directory called ESX admins. And before a patch, if I was in that group, I could take over your ESX environment. Full control, root. And then I'll have to say this because we have this every almost patch, right? ADL vulnerability. Right? Or the next big zero net. Right? There's always the next. So we'll talk about that. And it really, when I say the next big 0 day, it's really a bigger problem because of things like Claude Mythos, Moke, AI. You guys mentioned some of those things. Those 0 days become very quick to exploit. But that's not it, right? Microsoft Teams. How many guys use Microsoft Teams in your organization? Oh yeah. What about this one? This has been going around, you know, it's in the news every day, right? Teams external access, malware delivery via chat. Any red teamers? Any red teamers in here? Nope. What one? Okay, we got one. Have you ever heard of Convo C2?
I don't use Kerberos too.
So Convo C2 is a red team tool that was used for penetration of Microsoft Teams. It allows you to do webhooking. I can do webhooking. I can actually do this. This actually became something that I didn't know about until probably maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago. It's called Conversational C. So I'm thinking it was Convo C2, but basically what they're doing here is they're impersonating IT support and then basically telling them to run PowerShell, right? Conversational C. There was one ransomware group, actually ransomware variant, called Manchibus. It's still highly available, and they actually still do this. So we always say phishing, right? Phishing is where we do social engineering. Yes, it is true. But Teams is the new playground for social engineering. I'm going to tell you that right now. From a Microsoft perspective, absolutely true. Now we're going to talk about the other side, the device. Right? Did you know that you can make your device look compliant in Microsoft Intune? Yeah. Token theft and replay. Here's one that we're talking about. So again, mass device wiping, because you can actually do that within Microsoft Intune. So think about that. You probably heard of the Striker attack that happened. Big deal. So now we're going to shift for a minute. So any blue teamers in here? Double blue teamers. So we're going to look at from a defender to the attacker. And so the attacker and then the model. So as defenders, what do? Right? We look at the audit objects. True. Maybe look at some settings. We'll do some snapshots of our environment to see how things are moving along. What do attackers do? They look for this, relationships. They look for overlap. They look for chain permissions. The difference in this perspective, I'm going to tell you right now, is why these attacks keep working. If we only look at object settings and snapshots, and we don't put ourselves in the mind of the attacker mental model, we're going to be dealing with the same stuff over and over again. No one stopped ransomware, right? And I'm not saying anybody can stop ransomware, but we can get better. We can slow it down, for sure. So if we look at this cybersecurity attack team, right? Normally starts with reconnaissance, so I'm gonna leave reconnaissance to the side. So we look at initial, right, some kind of initial access, we get credential access, we move to privilege access, and then really from there we go to our destructive. So that is traditional. I want to flip it around a little bit. So let's look at it from an identity perspective. We still have to get initial access. How I get that initial access really doesn't matter. It doesn't. Could be phishing. But there's access brokers out there. I can go buy credentials. So initial access, and then once this really becomes, my initial access could be coming from a vulnerability. We talked about that. Once I get credential materialization, this changes the game. Because if we look at it from an identity perspective, credentials allow me to do what? Authenticate. And then I can do this. We can use what's inherent to Active Directory because it's delegated trust abuse. I said that earlier. Active Directory has no concept of zero trust. if it's supposed to be, if it was supposed to be trusted, it's automatically trusted. And then, from an identity perspective, once they abuse that trust, this is what changes the game. Persistence. Again, as my job as the attacker, I do not want to get rebooted out of the system, right? I want to persist. And then what do? I clean up my blind spots. How many of you guys use SIM technology? Everybody, right? Probably. What if I change your audit policy? How effective is your SIM? What if I clear your logs? How effective is your SIM? It's not. So I'm going to tell you right now, every step relies on authorized behavior. So now, so I'm going to say also, this is key. This is where defenders believe the incident is over. If we look at that left side, we believe everything's over. And this is where the attackers know it's not. Because they go for that persistence and they've cleaned up their blind spots. Look at the attack data. It's out there. So now we're going to get into toxic combinations. Right? Some of you might have heard some of these, some of you may not. What I'm going to say though is single issues, you can usually, they're survivable. But when combinations, right, they can become catastrophic. Let that sink in. So what is a toxic combination? I'm going to talk about a couple here. The first one is, who's probably done this, right? We have group policy. Anybody use group policy? Yeah, absolutely, right? Anybody go in and give someone rights or a group rights to do something in a group policy? And then maybe you're like, that person left, and you delete that account or that group gets deleted? Do you think the apples get cleaned up? No. You get unresolved SIDs, right? So unresolved SIDs in group policy, what does that lead to? Ghost admin privileges. What about this one? I'm actually going to do this one today. I'll do a live attack. Simulated live attack. I'm not going to put everything down. But DCSync. So DCSync normally gives you what? Hashes. If I perform a DCSync attack normally, I just get hashes. But if I have reversible passwords, what's that do? It gives me plain text. So first of all, let me ask you guys a question. If you have a password policy that says do not allow reversible password encryption in your domain, do you think you're safe? No, because there's actually an attribute on the user account that says, I don't care. Store my account and that, So no, this leads to instant credential theft. Admin SD holder. You guys know what the admin SD holder really does, right? So it was built by Microsoft to really protect Active Directory from certain areas. There's a back-end process. We all in the industry called it SD prop until Jim Sikora corrected us. There's a back-end process that runs every 60 minutes in Active Directory by default. It looks at this object called admin SD holder inside of your organization, and it takes those permissions, it uses those permission role template, and it takes those permissions and puts them on the apples of your most protected groups, your domain admins, your schema admins, right? All those protected groups. But there was a problem there, because it was really meant to only have certain permissions in there. Anybody start out with Microsoft Exchange on-prem in their environment?
Oh, God.
Yeah. How do you guys move to the cloud, right, and no longer have any Exchange on-prem? Probably a lot. How many of you guys went back and audited admin SD holder for Microsoft Exchange groups? Probably nobody. Anybody early adopter of Microsoft 365 and maybe started out with DCSync? Yeah, I got a couple, right? What account got added to the admin SD holder by default? MSOL. Right? So those are attack paths. Inherited trust. This is hidden shadow admins. I love this one. I take your whole domain down. Service connection points. Anybody use SCCM? Anybody doing hybrid join devices? Like there's a lot of service connection points out there. What if I don't audit the permissions to my service connection points? Can I use a service connection point to be a jump off? Absolutely. There's another one. Right? I can actually use it to siphon credentials. I can actually redirect you and do command and control. This is super dangerous. Did you get a copy of it? I saw you there. So now let's talk about some social, and we're all guilty of this. Myself, everyone in this room. Anybody have kids? Right? Any of your kids getting ready to graduate and start a real career? Or maybe an internship? All right, first of all, if your name's Sally Sue, it's not about you, right? It is in this scenario. We'll throw that out there because we did have someone, Sally, in the room, but her name was not Sally Sue. All right, so Sally Sue, who is she? She's getting an internship at a large healthcare company, right? So she got this internship, she's happy, she's excited. What is she gonna be doing? She's gonna be working on the service desk. So what does she do? We all do it, right? She's like, oh, I'm so excited, I got an internship at this large healthcare company working at the service desk. She updates it, she puts it on LinkedIn. Large healthcare provider. It could be, in this scenario, it could be any provider. It could be anything. But what happened? We're going to get into the shadow access part. But really, what I want you to understand is AD reconnaissance starts long before the network entry. Let's just realize that. Public queues open doors. It opens doors for organizations. So I'm going to talk about what I'm going to show you as an attack here in a minute. So I want you to understand, Sally is an intern. She is getting ready to get onboarded. What is she expecting? She is expecting an email with some onboarding information. Doesn't seem out of the normal. Remember also, Sally is an intern. She's not a security expert. Not yet. She's going that way. So Sally gets phished. Anybody hear of EDR silencer or EDR killer? Right, they're real. EDR killer has gotten better, actually. EDR silencer is the one I'll use here. So EDR silencer kills off the EDR. Then what happens? Right? Reverse shell. That's the most common command and control. Anybody hear of who am I? Where can I find who am I? Every Windows machine out there. I don't need PowerShell. Who am I? Native. Who am I / groups does what? Shows me the group membership of that user. Is that going to trip an EDR? No, that's normal. Delegated rights enumeration, right? PowerShell. Anybody hear of DSACLs? DSACLs, very powerful, very powerful. Right? So then, hidden access, right? We're going to use a group called IGA admins. Happens to have generic all. So we'll talk about that. So really, this becomes privilege without domain admins, right? Visibility without alerts. This is all normal activity. I have not done anything suspicious in this organization. Then I'm going to show you, because generic all has extended rights inside of Active Directory. We're going to perform a DCSync attack. Ever heard of Mimikatz? Anybody heard of Mimikatz? Yeah. Right? Normally you get the NTLM pass, or the hash. But with reversible password, changes the game. Right? And once I have control, I can do pretty much anything. Golden ticket. So what I'm going to tell you is DCSync is not magic. It's 2 permissions. DS replicate get changes. DS get replicate get changes all. What is it? It's a consequence of trust. It's needed. You're not going to abuse that trust. Right? Credential theft is the outcome of delegated authority. It's not a prerequisite. So then we're going to go through here, log into the domain controller, going to speed through this, and then just get to it. And then we're going to launch a little simulation of a ransomware. All right, I'm gonna come back to my machine here. For some reason that mouse doesn't work. Now I gotta pray to the demo guys, right? I mean, that's what we all have to do when we're doing live demos. So there's your prayer to the demo guys. Let me know. All right. Oh,
Oh, the hacker locked you out already.
no. Maybe. Nah, not quite. He might have got me. All right. So what are we doing? Let's that exact step. Make it maybe a little bit bigger so you can see. So let's walk through this a little bit. So this is simulation. I'm not hacking anybody's machine, I promise. So remember, Sally is expecting onboarding, right? The Fisher, EDR silencer, it's real. I'm not going to tell you where to get it. The disabled EDRs, there's something called EDR killer. Command and control, very simple, right? There's way many ways to do reverse shell. Who am I? This is the key. So who am I allows me to see a group called service desk admins here in a minute. Once I find service desk operators, DS ACLs, right? I can scan to see what that has. I can find a group or an OU called IDM. You might have something called identity management in your environment. It's not too far-fetched, right? Oh, look, service desk operators has full control, right, over user objects, so they can reset passwords, write members. Very common. Your help desk, are they able to add members to groups? Yeah, usually. So, I did some int. That was me adding to the group. There's a group called IGA admins that has these rights. So think about this. Everything I did was above bar, right? It's above bar. She has access. It's her job to have these permissions. Nothing is out of the norm. That is key. All right, so we're going to close that step out. We're going to do 2 more steps, and then we'll go back to the slides. Come on. There we go.
Poor Sally.
Dang it. Oh, I'm spelling her name wrong. That's what I have a pitch nerve in my one hand, so I'll blame that. There we go. So, let's get to this one. All right, so let's run the next step. Remember, Mimikatz, right? Seen Mimikatz before. So if you're not familiar with Mimikatz, it usually comes as a password hash, which you can see. But guess what? It's not just the password hash that I get, because reversible password encryption was set on that account. And I'm going to tell you, before I've worked in companies and gone out and worked with other organizations and done assessments, etc. And I often find a lot of these mistakes. And if these mistakes will lead to exactly what I'm about to show you next. All right, so let's launch this last part of the attack. Oh. So we got the clear text password. So we all know this password now. But I can't type it. What the heck? Hang on. Right. All right. Well, you're not seeing the screen though, are you? Hang on, something changed. Going back to extend. Well, good, you didn't see me fat finger the password twice. Now you can see it, right? We can see it. Notice the background because it's kind of interesting. So let's walk through this. I'm going to then do this. So I'll give you a little story background. I'm flying to Miami to do this talk, and I'm sitting on the plane, and I'm rehearsing this on the plane, and I'm got my headphones on, I'm jamming, ready, practicing, get ready. The guy next over is like looking at me strange. I don't think anything of it. So, and then, you know, I continue to work. He looks at me again, like when I got off the plane, and I'm thinking, okay, why is this guy looking at me funny? And then I realized he saw this. Ooh. He probably thought I was hacking someone on the plane. I was surprised I didn't get arrested. And he probably saw this part is what made him a little nervous. So again, this is simulation, but this is real. This is exactly how it goes. They usually don't give you a countdown, right? I'll just tell you that. They don't usually give you a countdown. Once they get in, they don't give you a countdown. My domain controller is dead, right? It's gone. Keep that in mind. It's gone. I no longer have a domain controller. All right, so let's go back. Switch the settings. How am I doing on time?
About 10 minutes.
I'm good, yeah. I'm gonna get a couple more. All right. We're gonna go back to the slides. I think I might have like 4 slides. All right, so again, what we showed was this, right? So we'll kind of go through here. Because what I really understand is ransomware is the symptom. It's only the symptom. Identity failure is the cause. It's not the 0 days that everybody, I mean, yes, 0 days are important, but identity is key. If I don't have identity, I can't move on. So what I want you to understand is why these changes are missed, right? So as, again, blue versus red, unfortunately, right? So defenders, what do we assume? Permissions are authorized. We assume this, right? Attackers assume privilege always drifts, and they pile. I'll give you a perfect example. When you're onboarded, you get added to a group, right? Maybe you start out in one org or one department, right? You move to another department, you get added to that department. A lot of times, your group didn't go away. We're really good. I'll say this right now. As admins, again, I'll pick on myself. As admins, we're really good at adding people to groups. But as an admin, we're really bad about removing people from groups. Because we were given a ticket to add somebody. We were never given a ticket to remove somebody. Unless you have automation, good luck.
And there's not always a clear demarcation between what is required for the new position that was passed through from the old position.
And yeah, it's not all admin. Right?
Yeah, no.
Absolutely.
But also no clear definition of roles from the business side of it as well.
Absolutely. But again, we're really good at giving them. We're really bad at giving away. Take it away. We also assume every delegation is tracked. Hey, I got my ServiceNow ticket. I did my work. I know that's in there. You come back and ask me what I did yesterday? Again, what I tell you, what's the most dangerous permission? The one I did yesterday. I don't know. I have, like, how many people wear multiple hats in their work? Hey, you don't have, yeah, right? Do you have time to go back and say, okay, what I did for this, this, and this? No. I mean, there might be a paper trail.
And finding anything in ServiceNow that's past its one.
So,
It might as well be in a black hole.
attackers though assume legacy access is never audited, so we're good. The other thing that we really believe in, or at least what we did back then, is recovery wipes the slate clean. I can recover, right? Restore my backup, I'm good. Restoring Active Directory is a little bit different. We'll just say it that way. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, I think how attackers think. Remember, persistence is key. Backdoors, right? They survive the reboot. If I put in a golden ticket in your environment using Mimikatz or other solutions, if I use Mimikatz, that golden ticket is good for 10 years. Golden ticket allows me to impersonate anybody. If I can impersonate anybody for 10 years, and you just recover me, and I still have the KRBTPT account password, and I have that golden ticket, you think that matters? No, I'll tell you why. Because unless you double tap that account, that's going to survive. I actually worked with an organization. They said, hey, Craig, we were breached 3 times in 6 months. And I'm like, wow. I've heard of bad security, but 3 times in 6 months, that's unheard of. They were not breached 3 times in 6 months. They restored their backup. Their backup had persistence. In fact, another one that is great that survives persistence is giving yourself rights to the admin SD holder. What I found is authenticated users had full control over the admin SD holder. Does that not make every hair stand up on the back? Yeah, it does. So I'm going to just tell you right now. One side is living in delusion. I'll let you guys decide which side is living into delusion. I will say one side's really living a lie, in my opinion. So attackers live in what we stop revisiting. Now, I'm not going to say it that way because it's very important. Because you might do pen testing. And pen testing is good. Do not take me wrong. You may do an AD audit, a one-time scan. But I'm going to ask you a question. Is identity static? No. So if it's not static, why do we think a static control is going to solve the problem? It won't. It absolutely will not solve the problem we're dealing with today. So final takeaway. Right? Defenders hunt techniques. Right? We're looking at a basic, accounts, snapshots, as I mentioned, right? The surface. That's not how attackers hunt. Right? They hunt for combinations. Those chains that I talked about. So that's the key difference. And this is why it keeps working. Time and time again. If we can't start thinking like an attacker from that aspect and have something that does continuous, then we're in trouble. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.